We have a number of questions that people placed on the Q&A list. Graham Ogden, if you could lift your electronic hand, we can let you ask the question yourself. Otherwise, please tell us and I will read it. Graham?
Oh, thanks, Haim. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, yes.
Great. Question for Fatima's mum. I wondered what the reaction of Goldsmiths to your daughter's imprisonment was, and whether she's been able to continue her studies and examinations.
Sukaina, can you answer this?
Sure. From prison, obviously, she cannot continue her studies, but the university, as well as the student union at Goldsmiths University, has been quite supportive. They deferred her year for this whole past year while she was in prison. And obviously, there's no way she can start her studies or continue her studies this academic year as well. So I've applied to defer it this year as well, and just waiting to hear back on that. Hopefully that helps answer your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sukaina, and thank you, Graham. There is a question by someone who is not naming themselves. What will be the next steps if you lose the judicial review stage? I think, Frank, could you relate to that question?
I think it's more one for Huda, to be honest. I'm not instructed on that case per se. So I think maybe she's better placed to field it.
So what was the question? What would I do if we lost the judicial review?
Yes.
We probably appeal. It's the short answer. But you know, I don't. You know, I envision this is going to be a long fight. Hopefully, not a long fight to be deprescribed. But I imagine, you know, even if we win and do get deprescribed in the meantime, there is a likelihood that the state will probably appeal, especially if Yvette Cooper's still in power. You know, anything can happen. But I think ultimately, you know, we can't just rely on one mechanism for deprescription, and that's why I think it's so important to defend our juries campaign. And you know, we're not gonna give up until you know, we're deprescribed one way or another. And to be honest, I think their case is pretty pathetic, to be honest. You know, I've seen the papers in it; they get a lot of things wrong. It just seems full of errors, and there's a lot of lobbying behind the scenes, which, you know, we will see probably more of that coming to light. And I think it's been brilliant to see how many journalists have also taken it upon themselves to find out more information behind the prescription. You know, I am pretty confident, but I know that you can't put your full faith in the legal system, but I have confidence in our legal team. But most of all, I have confidence in people, the people that are coming out on the streets, hopefully in their thousands next Saturday, to oppose this. And, you know, we've seen it before with the poll tax. When thousands of people resist, it will be inevitable that they have to overturn this prescription. So, you know, we can't put all of our eggs in one basket, but one way or another, I'm sure this is going to be defeated. And hopefully we'll end with Elbit Systems having no choice but to leave the country, and also in Yvette Cooper and hopefully more people losing their job, because this is just, you know, it's a huge political mistake that she has made. I think she's already starting to realise that, and I think that's just going to come out stronger. She's resorted to a pathetic smear campaign in order to try and justify it. And, you know, the truth is coming out, more will come out, and I'm sure that, you know, we will prevail one way or another.
Thank you very much, Huda, and good luck with this case, of course. And the next question is to Frank again. Robert, could you pose your picture? Sorry, would you pose your question?
Just asking Robert to unmute.
Yeah, could you unmute, Robert?
Yeah, there he is.
Okay. Hi, now that's really to Frank, and it's maybe been covered by partly by past questions there. But as a regular marcher protester, people get disheartened, and we will continue. But it feels very defensive. Is there, in my ignorance, can you tell me, Frank, is there a process by which we can challenge the British government in court over misuse of the Terrorism Act? Rather than it,
yeah, I really agree with you. I agree with your point about it being too defensive. And I think that the time is ripe for us to go on the offensive. All I would say is that the Terrorism Act stuff, that's a bit more difficult. I mean, in some ways, Palestine Action is the most cutting edge offensive front in that struggle. And then obviously, my client, I represent Hamas to bring an application under Section 4. And that's something of an offensive strategy, right? It's like taking the case to the government. But I do think that the crucial strategic point that I always try to hammer home when thinking this stuff through with the comrades is that we need to subordinate any legal tactics to a prior political strategy. Like, look at what's happening with Palestine Action. Palestine Action, the attempts to ban Palestine Action will be defeated politically. There is a legal aspect to that challenge, but it is being defeated because of an extremely effective, well-coordinated political campaign. So lawyers, qualified lawyers can play some role, but ultimately what we need is a coordinated political movement. I really can't emphasize that enough. That's how we win. But beyond the Terrorism Act 2000, and I've suggested it should be abolished, and I think we should try to grow a campaign calling for its abolition. I do think that there are other ways we can take offensive legal action, and it's frustrating to me that more people aren't doing it. For example, many people have jobs and they work in workplaces where stuff has happened to do with Palestine, right? People managers send around emails saying, you're not allowed to wear Palestine badges anymore. Just sue them. Like if your employers put a foot wrong, just sue them. Just say, you can't do this. This is racist against Palestinians. We had a bake sale for Ukraine. We have something about Black Lives Matter on our website. And yet when we talk about Palestine, we're being told, no, you're not allowed to talk about this. That's racist. It's contrary to the Equality Act. You can argue that you're being discriminated against, or that it's anti-Palestinian harassment, or whatever it is. Same with the police. Like I said, when the police put a foot wrong, sue them and do it in a really public way. And like I said, run the case in this extremely political way that escalates and says, well, the reason you're doing this is because you're committed to the fascist ideology of Zionism and you're committed to suppressing speech that criticizes it. I think we should be bringing offensive legal action in the High Court. We should be bringing judicial reviews. I've talked about this in other contexts. Professional regulators like the Solicitors Regulation Authority and the General Medical Council that regulates doctors, they're extremely vulnerable to a judicial review where we just go into court and say more or less similar things to what I've been saying on this call. It's like, you're part of the British state. The British state is currently engaged in this genocide. You are suppressing anti-Zionist speech. You're engaged in anti-racist, anti-Palestinian racism. Like, I absolutely think that we should be going on the offensive much more than we are. Partly that's an organization problem. Partly that's a learned helplessness problem. But I welcome your emphasis on the need to pivot from an overly defensive strategy to what should be 23 months into a genocide. We need to be going on the offensive, going into court with the explicit intention of causing maximum damage to Zionism and causing maximum damage to the British state's policy of staunch support for Zionism. That's my view.
Thank you, Frank. I think, sorry, Haim. I just noticed that Mick's got his hand up.
Yeah.
Mick, did you want to comment on this as well?
I missed that. Yeah, Frank, absolutely. But here's the problem. Let's go to court and sue. Now, we've managed to extract a small sum of money from some Zionist smearers, but that was through their professional organization, a lawyer, or in another case, a teacher. But having been called Holocaust deniers and anti-Semites for a very, very long time, we've tried to take civil action, but we find when we go to a well-meaning, it's called defamation up here, we go to a well-meaning defamation lawyer. He says, look, we'll take your money, but you can't get into this game if it's less than 30 or 40 grand. So we can win, and we seize every opportunity in the criminal court. But I had always thought, because of that the civil route was pretty much closed off to us in view of the eye-watering sums of money.
Yeah, I hear that. And defamation is kind of a rich person's game, and it's mostly, you know, you've been defamed in the Sun and 2 million people have read it, kind of thing. So we have to think very carefully before we use the sledgehammer of defamation proceedings, absolutely. But the employment tribunal is a so-called no-cost jurisdiction. Strictly, it's possible to get a cost order in the employment tribunal, but the starting point is that unless you've done something unreasonable, you won't be forced to pay the other side's costs if you sue them and lose. And it's a bloodbath. People are being fired because they've criticized the Zionist entity. People are being suspended. They're being subject to detriments. They're being told to take off badges and items of clothing, and they're told they're not allowed to wear keffiyehs. All this kind of stuff is happening in workplaces up and down the country. And that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. We should go on the offensive there because it's low-hanging fruit. The risks are way lower, and it's very easy to publicize. It's also very relatable. It's very easy to get trade unions involved in that sort of stuff. So I absolutely hear what you're saying. Different types of case have different kinds of risks. And one of the risks is that you are forced to pay costs either to your own side or to the other side. And you know, part of the problem is finding or increasing our capacity. So having more comradely lawyers who are doing it for the right reasons. So at least when it comes to the question of costs, your own side is not the one imposing the eye-watering fees. But I absolutely hear what you say. It's a problem to be solved. But broadly, I think things like the employment tribunal help us to get around that problem quite effectively. And think about David Miller's case was an employment tribunal case, right?
Esther, you're going to take it over?
Yeah, I'll pick up the questions from here. Thank you, Chaim. So we had a question from Christina. Christina, do you want to ask your question to Huda?
Thanks very much, Esther. Yes, I had a question for Huda. Do you have any thoughts on whether the ban on Palestine action is linked with Britain's Ministry of Defence imminently with their award of a 15-year contract to Elbit Systems?
Yeah, no, I definitely do. So for context, they're in the running with to win a £2 billion contract to train the vast majority of British soldiers, which is pretty insane. That's even being considered, considering the current genocide in Gaza and all of these targeted sanctions that the government has been, this facade of sanctions that they've been doing in order to try and appease the general public to make it look like they're doing something. The fact that they're considering giving a company which is the backbone of the Zionist regime a contract like this, which would tie them in for over a decade with the core of the British military, is just insane in itself. But what's interesting is that they were chosen, as well as another group of companies, on February 11th, 2025 this year. And they were given £2 million to make their bid for the bigger contract. When we've seen now in the judicial review is that it turns out that it was on, sorry, my laptop was about to die. It was the day before the February 11th, on February 10th, the day before they gave them this £2 million to make this bid. That was when the day Yvette Cooper had decided to consider us for prescription. After waiting 2 months to make a decision on that, that's when she said, okay, let's look at Palestine action for prescription, the day before that happened. And that's too great a coincidence for it to be absolutely meaningless. It seems that a lot of this is about, the whole thing is about commercial interests. When you look at the basis of the prescription, which is about property damage to Israeli weapons factories, that's the sole basis of it. It's all about Elbit Systems. And Elbit Systems is up for potentially winning this contract. Palestine action is a huge risk for that, in the sense of disruption towards their factories, etc. So it makes sense that they would want to try and get Palestine action out of the way. I would like to hope that, considering what's happened since the prescriptions come into force, the strength of the movement behind it, the uncertainty of the upcoming judicial review, and the controversy around this, that they wouldn't go ahead with it. But there also seems to be a lot of corruption behind this deal, and a lot of dodgy dealings and breaking of the MOD rules. They hired someone very senior at the MOD at a time when it clashed with the rules to get that kind of expertise on board in order to try and gain an upper hand in the deal. So, you know, Elbit is obviously being a company which is based on the destruction of Palestine and is engaged in a genocide, is not afraid of breaking international law or domestic law to get what they want. And so, yeah, I definitely think there's a definite link between the contract and the prescription.
Thank you, Huda.
Yeah, as has been said in the chat, follow the money. I'd like to just call David now to ask his question to Frank about the IHRA definition. Go ahead, David.
Well, what I was wondering was if it is possible to challenge the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism on the grounds that it makes the criticism of a state impossible. And that has to be a breach of our human rights and against international law, I would have thought. But I would like your opinion on that.
Absolutely. Yeah, the IHRA definition, speaking of abolishing things, the IHRA definition should be abolished. I mean, if it ever had any use whatsoever, it's now completely degraded. Palestinians have been telling us that for years. I spoke about Corbyn briefly during my contribution. And in fairness to him, he tried to resist the NEC of the Labour Party passing the IHRA definition. But I remember at the time, a very broad coalition of Palestinian civil society organizations directly appealing to him and to the Labour Party, saying, do not pass this definition. It is going to be used to stifle the apartheid state as it is ethnically cleansing us. So it's long been clear that the definition is not fit for purpose. It's designed, whether intentionally or otherwise, its function, its effect is to stifle legitimate criticism of the arguably fascist ideology, certainly racist ideology of Zionism and the apartheid state of Israel. So there are attempts to challenge it legally. It seems as that, again, I would encourage people to think politically rather than legally. I think Edinburgh University, for example, is thinking about de-adopting it. That's the route, in my opinion. Large institutions saying, you know what, we made a mistake by adopting this definition. We're de-adopting it. So that's the crucial strategic approach: is to pressure institutions to de-adopt. But as to legal challenges, they are starting to bear fruit. I was involved in a High Court case representing a solicitor who appealed the decision to strike him off, and the president of the High Court, who's incidentally overseeing the Palestine Action JR, handed down what was in some ways a very useful judgment that did damage to the three most egregious examples of the IHRA definition. And what the president of the High Court confirmed in that case is that you can call for Israel to be abolished. That's not anti-Semitic, and there's no reason, there's no even presumption that it is anti-Semitic. So pushing back against this, racist endeavor example, right? And he even confirmed that that in principle, and if done carefully, it's possible to draw comparisons between contemporary Israeli government policy and that of other fascist regimes, including Nazi Germany. So that's a binding High Court judgment that basically does a lot of damage to the IHRA definition, in my opinion. And again, I said that I think we should be going on the offensive and bringing offensive legal cases. It seems to me that a well-resourced group choosing the right claimant, good set of facts, should be bringing a judicial review challenging one of these regulators. And one of the grounds of any such challenge should be, you cannot be relying on the IHRA definition anymore. That definition is completely broken. It's racist against Palestinians. It needs to be abolished. That's my view.
Yeah, and it's not even a definition. And over to Tony, I think you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, people forget that the IHRA defines itself as a non-legally binding instrument, and yet it's been adopted by all sorts of organisations, including the police. And I think we should be challenging, I mean, I've already done so in a complaint, that the police have no business adopting the IHRA, because what they're effectively saying is that anyone who supports Palestine solidarity and is anti-Zionist is anti-Semitic. And in their advice to officers, they specifically say that comparisons with Nazi Germany is offensive to Jewish people, the assumption being that all Jewish people are of one mind. So I really do think it needs to be challenged, not only legally, but politically. Most universities, under threat of defunding by Gavin Williamson, if you remember in the last government, adopted the IHRA. And I think it's time, the time is more than ripe to now say it's about time that you de-adopted it, because what it's doing is saying that support for the Palestinians is inherently racist. It's denying their right to self-determination. So we should be going on the offensive against the IHRA.
Yes, becoming more and more apparent. Thank you, Tony. I'm trying to pick out people that haven't yet asked a question. Heina Mo, is that how you pronounce your name? Question for Sukaina, but I also just wanted to add Graham's comment to Sukaina, how much I admire what Fatima and the others have done, considering the cost of their freedom and education. If you could pass that on to her. So, Heina, would you like to ask your question to Sukaina, please? Well, maybe you're not able to speak. So if I can ask the question then, it's the question about the fact that Fatima's been in prison without charge longer than usual legal time. Isn't that itself something on which you should win?
Sure. So to clarify, they have been charged. It's being in prison without trial. But again, the custody time limits for anyone in prison without trial is a maximum of 6 months. But unfortunately, when terror laws come into place, or they're being abused, as is with the Fulton case, then everything else falls, and the like we've seen here with the Fulton's imprisonment for over a year now. Many of them will be in prison for up to 2 years, before they stand trial, because of the counter-terror laws and the abuse of them by the government. It's led to this, and the safeguarding would then, would not apply in their case, because the counter-terror laws would take precedence, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you. I've got a question from Bernie. Bernie, are you able to ask your question? I think you're directing your question to Tony.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I've actually I did have some exchange with Tony via email on this topic. And what I was concerned about was that if we look back at the history of what happened with the sort of disciplinary, looking at the Labour Party as a two the Socialist Labour Party and the Parliamentary Labour Party was a schism, whereby we had on the right-hand side all these reactionary right-wing Zionist type people, and making sure that the likes of Graham Bash and Tony and Jackie Walker and Mark Wadsworth, Ken Livingstone and others were exiled from the party on the grounds of their purported anti-Semitism. And my worry is that the very excellent blog Tony wrote about Zara, why will Corbyn be appeasing them? Yes, we will have a rerun of what's. This is my question. What measures can be taken? My question is, what measures can be taken? I mean, this party represents the most existential threat to the establishment in years. Even more than the Corbyn party and Momentum. And I'm just wondering.
What can be done before it's too late?
There's going to be people active in the party who are with masters of the dark arts. So I'll put this over to Tony. So if you'd like to respond to that, Tony.
Yeah, if we can link that with Chris's question as well, Tony.
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is that the new party which still hasn't got a name, but has got 850,000 people signing up to it, is an extremely important initiative. And we should ensure that it's not torn apart in, if you like, disputes which don't need to take place. I think there is overwhelming support for the Palestinians in the new Your Party. Corbyn, in his usual muddle-headed fashion, has refused to call himself an anti-Zionist, but he does have a long history of support for the Palestinians. And I think we don't need to get tied up in a form of words. What matters is the reality of the positions you adopt. Corbyn supports the right of return of the Palestinian refugees. That in itself would mean an end to the Jewish state. He is still supporting two states, and I think it's quite clear that the new party does need to adopt a position that it doesn't support any ethno-nationalist state. It supports, like in South Africa, a unitary, democratic, secular state. And that is quite important. No one in South Africa would have supported in the anti-apartheid movement a white state and a black state. So why in Palestine are some people still harboring the illusion that you can have a Jewish state and a Palestinian state? I think that is the really important battle. But I have no doubt that although it's had an easy ride so far, the new party is going to come under sustained attack. And so we have to be prepared for that in advance. I certainly think some of Corbyn's old advisors, Carrie Murphy in particular, also James Schneider, who failed abysmally to actually deal with the anti-Semitism onslaught of the Zionists, need to be replaced. I don't think they have that much to offer in terms of advice, and they would be well to take a back seat. So that, if you like, is my position on the new party. But it is an important initiative, and it does pose a real challenge to the existing parties, bearing in mind that the Tories and the Labour Party are really down in the polls, and in fact the new party is on level pegging according to some polls with Starmer's Labour Party. So I'd like to see us finish off the Labour Party once and for all and have a truly left-wing socialist party as the alternative.
Thank you, Tony. And I think what we're going to do now, there are some questions remaining, but we would like to ask all of the panelists to provide their closing comments on the discussion we've had this evening, and perhaps if they can answer any remaining questions, albeit briefly. So I'm going to invite all the panelists now to take the stage, as it were. And if you can each speak for around 1 minute, summarising what you've heard this evening, and take it so that people can take final views from you away from this meeting. So, and if you can speak in the order in which you appeared as well. So I'll call Sukaina first, if that's okay, and we'll continue from there. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Esther, for the opportunity. And it was a really interesting evening, I must say. I've learned lots by listening to everyone speak. And I would say that I have come away hopeful, if that's the right word, that we're going to win this. You know, like Huda said, might take some time, but eventually we should be the ones on the side of victory. And just to the audience, just wanted to sort of remind you of the two takeaway bits that I did mention in my talk. One about the campaign that we have against Elbit and reporting Elbit for war crimes. I did put in the link in the chat. So if you could kindly support us, it literally takes 30 seconds to send a letter reporting Elbit for war crimes. And I think this is extremely important right now with the Ministry of Defense about to give them the £2.5 billion contract to train our soldiers So I think this should hopefully halt something somewhere. If a full-blown investigation is unleashed on Elbit. And secondly, the trials are coming up. Fatma Zainab's trial is in November 2025. So do continue to raise awareness about the Filton 24, continue to speak about them, share about them on your socials, and most importantly, be there to offer your solidarity and support outside the courts. The trial will be at Woolwich Crown Court starting on the 17th of November for the first group of 6 activists. So please do come and support us, come and show the government, the CPS, that there is massive support for the group, and you know, we're not going to take this quietly. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Sukaina. I'm going to go on to Mick now. I noticed a comment from Eric in the chat. Of course, we are extremely distressed by the number of innocent children killed. And what you're asking is that we launch an immediate demanding immediate action from the UN or similar. So if you can bear that in mind, perhaps. Over to you, Mick, please.
Yeah, a couple of things. One, there's no point complaining that the BBC behaves the way it does. I mean, it is what it is. It's a state propaganda organization. We are facing full spectrum repression, and it's not just governments. For example, the educational system, schools, local educational authorities inhibit, prevent, demean or attack children or parents who want to raise the issue of Palestine in their classrooms, thinking naively that we did it for Ukraine, therefore we can do it for Palestine. You can't, because it won't be allowed. So I think these are areas of struggle, and I think we should think about how we can mobilize there, because there's schools all over the place, there are angry parents everywhere, and there are some children who might want to discuss Palestine. But the full spectrum nature of the repression is beginning to wear off. It was great to see Kneecap. It was great to see Bob Villan. We saw examples which could not be easily controlled by the authorities, where pro-Palestine feeling broke through. And I think that's where we are at the moment. The repression for the last few years has been intense. It's beginning to wear thin. People are beginning to realize that they can fight back. And although there's a special opportunity in some football stadiums and in concerts, that general feeling of the need to oppose the repression is widespread. We need to think of ways, channels, whereby people can be energized to actually do it. And I think obviously there's an electoral aspect to this, but electoral politics don't easily make it easy to raise issues like Palestine. People are concerned about health service, some are concerned about bloody immigrants and so on, all sorts of garbage. And to raise the issue in a general election is very difficult. We have to do it, but I think given the rotten nature of virtually the whole political establishment, the British Medical Association bearing down on people, and educational institutions, we're dealing with a full-scale systemic repression. And I think people need to draw the appropriate conclusions, and they might well merit the phrase, the description, some revolutionary conclusions, that we need to see ourselves as taking on an entire system rather than just a few bad apples. Yeah. In Scotland recently, although the cops are on a hair trigger, there was a demonstration in Falkirk, and a filthy creature was there holding a banner saying "kill them all." Police Scotland have taken no action whatsoever. Cops are standing alongside them smiling. So it's not a level playing field. We're up against an entire system. We can win, but it's going to be one hell of a tough fight.
Absolutely, Mick. Thank you. Over to you, Huda.
Thank you. Yeah, I just start with something I forgot to mention, which I feel is quite important. One of the Filton 24, T. Hoxer, who's been on remand since November last year and is on trial in April next year, this is her 20th day of being on hunger strike, and her medical situation has deteriorated. And she's only been demanding very basic things, including being able to have her recreational activities reinstated, having her library job returned and to have her withheld mail given to her, a lot of which are already rights that she is supposed to have, but she has been attacked by the prison system, especially after prescription has happened. She has met 2 out of 3 demands, and a lot of people have been calling into HMP Peterborough and emailing in to make sure that those demands are met. So if people can continue to do that, and also just to keep raising the profile of what's happening in British prisons, because there are 33 people inside prison, and they are facing, you know, harsh treatment and are being labelled as terrorists by the British state. So I just wanted to raise that. I wanted to thank everyone. There's been an incredible amount of support over the years for Palestine Action, but really seeing how much it's grown, you really see how many allies you have, and that's what gives you faith. And, you know, all of us who've been affected by this, faith that, you know, we are going to win and that we are a strong movement, and that they've picked the wrong battle and that they are going to lose this. And so, and I would just make one final comment because I can't help myself. But I do believe it should be quite an easy thing at this point, 2 years into a genocide, to say you are anti-Zionist. And I do find it quite disappointing and frustrating when that hasn't happened, I have to say. It is quite basic. And I also think it's just frustrating to see how can a new party start on that foot when we're not willing to be different this time and more forthcoming with what we actually believe in. But I think that we can't just rely on electoral politics, like Mick said. We have to fight on the streets. We have to keep taking the types of action that we can take and resisting against the state in many different ways, and not put all of our eggs in one basket.
Thank you very much, Huda. Absolutely. And we're going to go on to Richard now for his closing comments.
Yeah, it's been great listening to everyone, and I'd like to underscore some of the things that we heard. I wholeheartedly agree with everything Frank outlined about offensive action. You know, that's something that ironically the Zionists have understood very well and manipulated and used as a very effective strategy to silence their adversaries when they're not killing them, of course. So, you know, there is a lesson somewhere in there that we should be using legal challenges. We should be using all the tools at our disposal to fight back, and not just kind of, you know, take this lying down and just roll over. That's not going to work. And like Huda said, you know, we should. This goes back to a security strategy, right? Compartmentalization, not putting all your eggs in one basket. Whether it's electoral politics, whether it's legal challenges in the courts, whether it's direct action, whether it's operational security, cybersecurity. I really think this should be a multifaceted approach that we're using, and we should make good use of it. And yes, of course, it's I'm following, of course, the debate about Jeremy and so on, and I've kind of avoided opining about it because I'm just waiting to see how it goes. But it's very impressive, the numbers they have. And you know, obviously, I would like to see them adopt a more anti-Zionist, a very clear anti-Zionist position. I mean, I'm in Vienna, and if I can do it here, you can definitely do it in England. So there shouldn't be any qualms about that, especially after the last 2 years. So also for court dates, you know, I want to help get people out for everyone's court dates. So if you guys can email me or contact me with specific court dates that you want me to post about, that you want me to you know, basically raise awareness about, please do that so I can help as much as I can, so we can use my reach to get people actually into the streets in front of the courts. I remember how effective that was for Julie and how important it was. So I'm at your disposal.
Thank you so much for that, Richard. We'll have to pass on those contact details to attendees. Thank you. Over to you, Frank.
Comrades, it's been emboldening to share this space with you. Obviously, it is still a genocide, and so we need to continue escalating our opposition to the genocide and to the genocidal ideology of Zionism that's animating it. And in particular, those of us in Britain have to escalate our opposition to our government's own participation in it. I'll just reiterate some of the things that I said. The Terrorism Act 2000 is an extremely draconian full frontal assault on everyone's right to free expression. There seems to be a political revolution occurring against Zionism. And part of that political revolution, in my opinion, should include the explicit call for the Terrorism Act 2000 to be abolished. I think we need to explore the link between the broader emergence of contemporary 21st century fascism and the specific degeneration of Zionism. It seems as though Zionism is in a crisis, that's undeniable, and it's for us to ensure that it's a terminal crisis. And then finally, in my opinion, we should be going on the offensive against Zionism. I think it's extremely weak. It's not capable of defending itself. It can't defend itself against the military blows that are being directed at it, both on October 7th and with all of these missile strikes from Iran and all the rest of it. But also crucially, ideologically, it can't defend itself. So I think find ways to go into court and do maximum damage to Zionism, find ways to persuade anyone that you know that we should be loudly proclaiming our commitment to the anti-Zionist cause. And let's just create, I think, cultural spaces is an underappreciated front in this struggle. Just create spaces where it's considered normal to be anti-Zionist, so that if any Zionists want to come into those spaces, they understand that they're, for once, that they're on enemy terrain, and that Zionists are all pariahs now. They're not really welcome in sort of ordinary society because they've aligned themselves with an explicitly racist ideology that's responsible for a genocide.
Thank you, Frank. I think we're illustrating very well the multifaceted approach that a number of you have referenced. So finally, before I hand back to Chaim, a minute from you, Tony.
Okay, I mean, I think it's disappointing that Corbyn hasn't come out as an anti-Zionist, but that is the situation. I think it's what is more important is that the party itself adopts a clear anti-Zionist position, even if its leader or its co-leader cannot. As regards Zionism, I agree with Ilan Pappy. I think we're seeing the beginning of the end of Zionism. Zionism was unlike apartheid in South Africa. It had immense political support in the West. It's now lost the battle of the narrative. It's now revealed itself to be what it is, which is a genocidal ideology and movement. And I think we have to pick up on that and drive that lesson home. And as Frank has said, we have to marginalize Zionism everywhere and its supporters. And I think that will become increasingly easy. In Brighton, the Zionists held a small march through the town. And it was quite amazing the way they were heckled and jeered by just ordinary people on the streets. That would never have happened in the past. The tide has turned, and it's in our favour. It will go out in a violent death throw, but it is on its way out. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. Normalising anti-Zionism. Finally, back to you, Chaim.
Thank you very much, all of you, for your excellent contributions to the struggle against Zionism and against this criminal government, which is continuing to support it after a whole century of crimes. Jewish Network for Palestine always was and will continue to be an anti-Zionist organization. We've said this quite openly, and we will continue to work against Zionism. Not only that, Tony and myself were some of the many speakers at the first Jewish anti-Zionist Congress in Vienna, where Zionism was started. And the next anti-Zionist Congress, Jewish anti-Zionist Congress, is called for Dublin and will be taking part in less than a year. And we intend to build an anti-Zionist movement across the globe like the anti-apartheid movement once was. And remember, nobody had a problem with being anti-apartheid. Now, apartheid was really a gentle movement in comparison to the crimes of Zionism. So I don't know what our good friend Jeremy Corbyn finds so difficult in saying, I'm an anti-Zionist. It's basically calling racists and genociders and naming their crimes. And the crime did not start on the 7th of October. So I hope that the new party and Jeremy will follow Zara Sultana and the many, many thousands of socialists and radicals in Britain and join the anti-Zionist camp. Thank you for all the speakers, and thank you for over 200 people who are marvelous, asked the right questions and demanded the right answers. We have got a lot to think about after today in terms of action and how we fight to defeat all aspects of Zionism in Britain.
Thank you. Good night.
And this webinar, like any other, will be available on the JNP website and on SLN. I don't.
Yes,
Yeah?
yes, it will.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and thank you all for taking part. We will close now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.